Yeah, I'll have to get my schedule from him tomorrow.
Here, just give him a call. I'm sure he'll answer, hopefully.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Your life would be so much easier if you got a car.
Yeah, someday. What are you doing? Stop! Stop! Get off!
Just knowing those final moments that she had were so horrific was hard to deal with.
I couldn't imagine who could take her life. I just couldn't.
You don't want to be outsmarted by someone that commits a crime like this.
I kept praying that I would get some good leads that would lead me to that killer.
What's up, Panic Fam? I'm Hannah. And if it's 2 a.m., the lights are off and the popcorn is gone cold, you know, it's Panic TV time. Welcome. If you survived this, and this, congratulations, all right? Congratulations, but your luck runs out here.
I spent 11.5 years in homicide. And when you have a case that's not solved, it just eats at you. And I've got this little girl's picture right up in front of me, staring at me every day. Get the guy that killed me. Get the guy that killed me. She's telling me, you know, let's get the guy that killed me. And I want to solve this case.
After a 31-year career, including the last 11 chasing the person who killed 18-year-old Lisa Summers, Detective Earl Cooper's retiring. For Cooper, not being able to catch Lisa's murderer is his lone regret.
That was a 911 call that came in. First thing I came up on was a bicycle, and then I seen a backpack that had been spilled, stuff had been spilled out of that backpack. And then I walked over towards where the body was lying, and I noticed a bra and some clothes were laying off of the body, and the body appeared to be a white female. I could tell by the way the bike was and the way the backpack was that she had been dragged to that location. I could tell by the clothing and the way the body was that she had fought back, because the way the clothes were torn off of her and the position of her body looked like she had been sexually assaulted. I also saw a cigarette butt that was fairly close to the body. I didn't know at that point whether she smoked or whatever, but I figured that that was evidence that we needed to gather. So I made sure that nobody else entered that scene till my technician gets there.
The body had no clothes on it, and you could tell that it'd been there for a little bit due to the condition of the body, for the coloring of it and the way the skin looks.
CSI collects the clothing, the cigarette butt, blood, and semen residue, hoping it will reveal who did this to Lisa Summers and why.
The street officer had told me that the two guys that found the body were still on the scene.
Well, I didn't see him at a vehicle. If you want to crime and a suspect...
So where were you guys coming from when you discovered the body?
We were coming from his house. It's on 34th, and we were coming over on a 38th. David said we should go across the field. And that's when we found the body.
And what'd you do then?
I went to a restaurant and called you guys.
"15 years after Lisa's murder, the killer is still on the loose.
Cold cases can be very frustrating. It's not that the original investigators did a poor job, it's that cases are what they are. If the evidence is not there, or the right people to speak to are not there, or not listed, or unknown, the case is always going to be a cold case.
Sometimes time and technology can fill in the gap. So Indianapolis police start reviewing its unsolved murders. Detective Bill Rogers is assigned to Lisa Summers' cold case.
A lot of times it's a personal issue. You don't want to be outthought or outsmarted by someone that commits a crime like this. And I made it my mission to catch the killer.
Rogers joins forces with the Indianapolis Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Denise Robinson.
Cold cases present, I think, some unique challenges for prosecutors. Part of it is making sure that you have witnesses who are not only available but have some recollection of the events. And we have some DNA testing we can do now that we couldn't do years ago. But other than that, it's putting together a puzzle where sometimes you don't have all the pieces to the puzzle.
To know what pieces he's working with, Detective Rogers counts on the original lead investigator, now retired Earl Cooper.
Lisa's mother's name was Dorothy Summers, and they lived in an apartment complex not too far from where the homicide actually occurred.
I'm sorry to have to inform you of this, but we found your daughter's body this morning. It appears to be a homicide. I'm sorry.
No. I can't believe this. She was such a good girl. No, I can't.
Dorothy reported Lisa missing 4 or 5 days before this incident.
It's just the two of us. She helped me.
An infant when her father walked out, Lisa had to grow up fast to help her ailing mother.
Lisa was a person of little means that was doing the best she could do in life. She was supporting her mother and trying to advance her education to make some type of better life for herself. This case became personal for the fact that, in my opinion, Lisa was a true victim. She was doing the best that she could do with her limited skills and work opportunities.
Lisa and her mother, as long as I had known them, were always just the two of them.
Hey. How you feeling?
Okay. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah. Good. Oh, I'm fine.
All right. Well, let's take your medicine. All right. You want to take 2 of these? All right. Okay.
All right.
They were 2 peas in a pod. I know that she and her mother had a very special bond. They had a very simple life, but they had each other, and that really seemed to be an awful lot to them and all that they really needed.
Lisa's mother depends on her daughter to pay the rent.
She and her mother had this paper route. When Lisa's mother was unable to do the route, Lisa was right there to take over. She really wanted to take care of her mother.
Everybody agrees she's the perfect daughter.
I couldn't imagine who could take her life. I just couldn't.
The news of Lisa's murder devastates her best friends, Billy Hicks and Julie Williams.
Like a lot of teenage girls, we all have dreams. And we would, talk about, how the future would be.
So, we were driving over here. We were talking about something.
About what?
We need to make a pledge.
We need to always live in the same neighborhood.
And have parties every weekend. and when we have kids, they'll always play together and do stuff.
Friends forever?
Mm-hmm.
Friends forever.
These dreams are all shattered when they hear the news of Lisa's murder.
I was taking my driver's ed class. Kids around me were talking about a classmate who had been murdered.
Yeah, Lisa Summers. She's dead.
Learning that Lisa was not only dead, but that she was murdered. That someone had taken her life in a very violent fashion was definitely the hardest thing I've ever had to live through. Just knowing those final moments that she had were so horrific.
I believe she's gone.
Billy and Julie wait for the day Lisa's killer is brought to justice.
Like, best friend, you know?
Somebody murdered her, and not only did they murder her, but they just left her in this field, you know, out in nowhere.
She wanted to better herself, further her education, so she could provide more for her mom.
She showed initiative. In fact, the night that she was abducted, she had her school books with her. So I think she was certainly making an effort.
I couldn't understand why somebody would do that to her. Just, there was no reason.
Cold cases are no different than the other cases. They just need that one bit of information that either leads to the right person or that one small piece of evidence that can link someone to the crime scene.
Chasing that elusive, overlooked lead after 15 years, every discovery needs to be re-examined, starting with a death threat.
Whenever there's a threat to kill that's been made and the police document it, they need to investigate that to determine if that was a viable threat. That's certainly something that I would demand they do as a prosecutor.
You missed a spot. What is your problem? You know what my problem is.
No, I don't know what your problem is.
My boyfriend.
What are you talking about?
You were all over him. You were flirting with him.
I was being nice to him because he's a customer.
Well, maybe you should stop doing that. Next time I see you with him, I'm going to kill you.
You're crazy.
This little girl actually made a threat that she was going to kill her.
Ugh, I swear my neighbors think I'm probably getting murdered right now.
By December 2004, 15 years after the murder of 18-year-old Lisa Summers, the case remains open. Now assigned to the Indianapolis PD Cold Case Unit, Detective Bill Rogers starts by revisiting the original investigation. There, he learns Lisa got a death threat only days before she's killed.
There was some talk that Lisa had a few squabbles with a female employee at the fast food restaurant. She and Lisa were dating the same 18-year-old boy at the same time.
Alex, how well did you know Lisa?
We knew each other pretty well.
Did you have a pretty good relationship?
Yeah, we were friends until she started flirting with my boyfriend, so I was pretty angry.
I had to bring everybody in that had heard that had talked about it, to see how real that threat was.
We had several folks say that they saw you, or heard you threaten her.
I really didn't mean it. I wasn't being serious.
But now here Lisa's dead, so I just wanted to...
No, I promise I would never kill her.
And through talking to all these people, I determined that threat was a petty thing. I couldn't get anything positive out of that to make a suspect out of her.
That was an 18-year-old squabble between two girls that later never panned out.
Detective Rogers moves on to Cooper's next report. 2 days after the co-worker is cleared, two potential witnesses come forward. They might have seen the killer.
I received a phone call from a lady that stated that her daughter and her daughter's friend were broke down. They noticed a guy go by them. The one big thing they noticed about the guy was that he had a limp. They gave me a description of this guy. They thought he was somewhere between 6 foot, 6'2", 150 to 160 pounds. longish, dirty brown hair. Shortly after, they seen a young woman come by riding a bicycle, and she appeared to have a fast food restaurant shirt on. They said she was probably about 18 years old. They said when the girl caught up to the guy walking, he said something to her. And from that point, they started talking, and they disappeared over the other side of 465. When the girls gave me a description of the guy they seen with a limp, it reminded me of one of the two guys that had found the body had a bad limp.
Cooper interviews the man with a limp, David Ashworth, about the night of Lisa's murder.
We brought you in to ask you a few questions.
Right, what do you need to know?
Tell me about that night.
I was hanging out with buddy Jim. We were hanging around, and he dropped me off at a bar at 34th Street.
What time did he drop you off?
11 or 10. I don't know. We were just hanging out. I didn't really check my watch a lot.
And you said about 12:30 you guys left the bar?
Mm-hmm.
And where did you go then?
I went home and was there the rest of the night.
Who was at your house? Anybody?
My wife, Diane.
Ashworth, you willing to take a polygraph?
Sure, no problem. I don't got anything to hide.
He, in fact, did flunk the polygraph test. Now, the thing with the polygraph test is that the polygraph tests are not admissible in court. I knew at that point he was married. I had his address, I had his wife's name. I went to her, personally went to her house and talked to her.
Mrs. Ashworth?
Yes.
I'm Detective Cooper. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your husband, David?
I guess.
Could you tell me what time he returned home on June the 15th?
June the 15th, about 12:30 that night.
Okay, are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was around 12:30.
Okay.
Lisa would usually ride her bicycle home every night when she got off around 12:30.
Lisa Summers' time card showed her clocking out at the fast food restaurant at approximately 12:24 a.m.
Is everything okay?
So despite failing the polygraph, David Ashworth has a solid alibi.
David Ashworth at that point could not have been involved in it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With Ashworth cleared as a suspect, Detective Rogers starts digging for possible motives behind the murder. He wonders, why would anyone want to kill Lisa Summers?
Lisa was what we call a true victim. Lisa wasn't out slinging dope and selling stolen guns and doing robberies and things of that nature. Lisa did not deserve this by any means.
Best friends Billy and Julie ask the same question. Why Lisa?
I thought we were gonna go to the dance. No, I said we were gonna hang out.
Yeah, I'm not dancing.
Okay, why don't we go to Russell's?
Yeah.
Let's go to Russell's.
No way.
He is so cute.
I am not going there.
He's like the
Why
cutest
not?
guy.
No.
Come on.
Just stayed home.
So boring.
Thanks, you are so mean.
She was kind of the good girl of the group because she was the girl that wore the pretty dresses, and she was the girly girl. And you know, when we was teenagers, we were smoking, and she hated that. She absolutely would not let you smoke around her.
Lisa did not take risks. She was the cautious one. She was always in my ear trying to tell me to not do something or think first. And I definitely was not a cautious teenager. I was a run and go, think about the consequences later. She wasn't getting into cars with people she didn't know. It wasn't her. There was a whole lot of, why wasn't it me? Why wasn't it me?
After 1 month on the case, Detective Rogers can find nothing that Detective Cooper overlooked. But he still has more files to review. Cooper reported that 7 months after Lisa Summers' murder, 2 men in the county jail come forward, saying they know who did it.
Investigators got word from one of these men that he had information. Matter of fact, he had knowledge, personal knowledge of who killed Lisa Summers.
The informers, behind bars for rape and robbery, say another inmate named Kevin Johnson confessed to them about Lisa's slaying.
They were going to snitch on their friend and place all the blame on him. They made statements to me that he carried a gun. They made statements that he'd raped people before.
To identify the new suspect, Kevin Johnson, Cooper brings in the 2 witnesses who saw Lisa with the limping man the night she went missing.
I have some mug shots here I want you guys to take a look at and see if any of these resemble the suspect that you saw that night. The suspect.
Him.
You think so?
That looks like him.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the guy that we saw.
So if I were to ask you guys to testify in court, are you 100% sure this is the guy?
No, not 100% sure it looks like him, but...
When my witness makes a statement to me that, yes, he looks like him, but I can't say for sure that that's him, it sort of fizzles out. You can't go anyplace else with it.
Needing absolute certainty, Cooper presses the jailhouse snitches for details of the crime.
They were admitting that they were present at the crime scene, and by indicating that a third person had been involved in actually killing Lisa, they were trying to work a deal with the state to lessen their charges.
The police don't always put out 100% of their knowledge of a case to the public. And that's done because oftentimes only the killer and the police know very intimate facts about that case. That way, when a suspect is found and he or she confesses, we know that confession to be true if they give intimate knowledge of the scene that no one else could possibly know.
We told you we were part of it.
There was things that I knew that if they were involved, they should be able to tell me.
All right, stop wasting our time. Tell us what we need to know. Where was the body dropped? Tell us what kind of clothes she was wearing. You're telling us only things that the public already knows.
Cooper realizes the men have an ulterior motive.
They were just trying to get their times cut from the sentence they had received in prison.
For the Indianapolis detectives, another promising lead dries up, and Lisa Summers' case goes cold. In July 2006, 7 years after 18-year-old Lisa Summers' murder, her mother passes away before anyone is brought to justice for the crime.
When I discovered that Lisa's mother, Dorothy, was no longer alive, I became very emotional, almost enraged, and knowing that, Dorothy went to her grave not seeing the man that murdered her daughter go behind bars.
Investigators are equally troubled that after all this time, Lisa's killer still walks free.
Because you have all the work of previous investigators to draw from, you have new technology to draw from, and you've got your input into this case, it's frustrating the fact that you get the same dead end.
That same frustration has dogged Detective Earl Cooper well into his retirement.
I wanted to solve that case because I had 3 kids of my own. I had a daughter that was almost the same age as Lisa, and I would want somebody to work that case until they found the killer of my daughter. So I kept her picture on my desk, hoping and praying that I would get some good leads that would lead me to that killer.
But after years of chasing dead-end leads, Cooper's no closer to catching the man who raped and murdered Lisa Summers.
She was 18 years old. This little girl had just started her life. She was a good kid. She was trying to better herself.
Knowing where Lisa was heading in life and what her ambition and drive was, it made it very tragic.
So what do you guys want to do this weekend?
I want to go to the dance.
No, I'm not dancing.
What do you want to do?
I'll be home with my mom.
We were like the 3 Musketeers. We really thoroughly enjoyed being together, all 3 of us.
Look at Tommy.
Oh, he's so cute.
Adorable.
Yeah. Wait, what is she doing with Tommy?
That.
I
don't know. I think they're together, though. You're joking.
We were typical girls growing up. We would talk about boys and call them on the phone, you know, typical teenage kind of things.
The longer time goes, the more questions you have. The more you wonder, are they getting close? Do they have anybody in mind? Is anyone even thinking about this poor girl that was killed?
Almost 2 years after Lisa's murder, when all seems hopeless, a woman named Charlotte Ledbetter comes forward with new information about one of the men who found Lisa's body.
Well, I have some information on David Ashworth that you might be interested in. He was just like a friend of a friend, and I was definitely friends with his ex-wife, so I just really thought that I should share it with you.
The first time I met David Ashworth was at the bar at the time around our neighborhood.
Thanks for meeting us out, guys.
Yeah, we haven't seen you in so long. Sure.
I know.
Yeah, it's
You
really,
never
really
come
nice
anymore.
to see you.
He was very abusive towards her. He'd go out and get drunk and then come home and beat her up. She'd come to the bar, and you could tell she had extra makeup on.
Let's go. Let's go. And get me another one.
Okay,
let's go.
Let's just go. Come on.
He just was always hitting on women and trying to get them to go home with him and stuff and buying their drinks. He thought he was God's gift to women, but he really wasn't. He was like real thin and skinny and not very attractive, I didn't think.
Charlotte tells Cooper about a ride she gave Ashworth early one morning.
She stated that her boyfriend was working a construction site, that she had taken him to work and dropped him off, and as she was coming back up towards 34th Street, she actually seen David Ashworth.
I thought it was David Ashworth because he was limping, and not too many people in our neighborhood have a limp. So when I got up to him, I pulled over, and it was David.
Hey! David? What are you doing? You need a ride?
No, I'll walk. Thank you.
I'll give you a ride. It's not a big deal. What happened to you?
Got in a fight. Passed out in a porta-john.
You passed out in a porta-john.
And he was really sort of banged up. He had a lot of scratches on him, and he was just really dirty, you know.
What was his demeanor?
Sketchy,
Really?
you know? Yeah, and I mean, it was...
Seemed nervous, or?
He seemed like he'd had a really long night, you know? And
Can you drop me off before the house? I don't want Diane to see me coming home.
I thought that was kind of strange. And then after that, I dropped him off, and he went in the back door.
Over the next few days, David changes his story about that night every time Charlotte talks to him.
Another story was that he had been arrested, actually been arrested that night. Another story was that he'd fell in some bushes and got cut up. He was trying to explain to her why he was in the condition he was in.
So why haven't you come here sooner and let me know this?
I wouldn't want to, you know, give someone this information that would put him in jail, like in case he, you know, hadn't done it.
When a suspect gives different stories, gives some reason to believe that they're not telling the truth. Now, in this case, the detective had to look closely at whether he was lying for simply because of intoxication or was lying because of something else.
If Charlotte's account is true, then David's story about staying out all night contradicts his wife's alibi that he came home around midnight, the night Lisa Summers was murdered.
Lisa, we know, was last seen around 12:30 in the morning. Charlotte Ledbetter picks David Ashworth up sometime after 6 in the morning. Those 6 hours, 5.5, 6 hours, were completely unaccounted for. There was a big question mark as to what he was doing during that time period.
To find answers, the investigators look at the man with Ashworth the day they find Lisa's body.
Hey, what are you guys up to today?
At that point, I had no idea whether the friend was involved in this in any way, but I knew that he was with him when he found the body, so I had to put the heat on both of those guys to try to catch them in mistakes that I could use against them. The first thing he mentioned to me that David normally wasn't a morning person, but David actually had called him that morning and suggested they go up and watched some of the airplanes take off. As they were walking on 34th Street, David made reference to, let's cut through the field. And that was unusual because a half a block down the road, there is a driveway.
It's almost like David Ashworth is leading his friend to the body. But Cooper has no evidence, and Ashworth still has an alibi witness, his wife. It's her word against Charlotte Ledbetter's.
A lot of times when you're working a case and the developments and the leads run out and the case turns cold, you're waiting for the liars that are involved in your case to change their loyalties. And a lot of times they do, and they'll come forth.
Detective Cooper.
"16 years after the murder of teenager Lisa Summers, cold case detectives re-examine witness statements. One witness, Charlotte Ledbetter, points to David Ashworth. Detective Rogers double-checks his alibi in the case file.
The original investigators, Detective Earl Cooper, talked to David's wife. She gave them an alibi, or a story that David had been home with her all night in bed with her and that he never left the entire night.
But later, she changes her story.
Detective Cooper.
After 3 years on the case, Detective Cooper learns that Ashworth and his wife divorce, and she moves out of state.
Her new husband in Tennessee calls me, said, hey, she's got some stuff that she needs to tell you. She now doesn't have a threat from David. Now that liar can come forth and tell the truth.
Really?
Yeah, he came home around 7 the next morning.
She did, in fact, lie for him out of fear. And he did, in fact, come home about 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning.
What happened to you? David, what happened?
I fell in a bush.
You fell in a bush? There's
Yes, I fell
scratches
in a...
all over your...
Hey, mind your own business.
She was very suspicious of why he was all scratched up.
Get away from me. Let's go.
I thought that was going to break my case. I knew David Ashworth had lied to me in several statements. What Charlotte Ledbetter had told me proved to be true.
Really?
Detective Cooper has 2 witnesses refuting the suspect's version of events. But to build a solid case, he needs physical evidence to put David Ashworth at the crime scene. So Cooper turns to a relatively new and unproven technology.
Part of that investigation by Detective Cooper was he asked David to consent to a blood draw and a saliva draw, which David Ashworth readily agreed to do. And then those were turned into the crime lab for further analysis.
Ashworth's DNA gets compared to evidence from Lisa Summers' crime scene.
I had physical evidence that was found in that field. There was a cigarette butt that we found. There was also semen that was found. I presented that to the crime lab for the technician to do a DNA test.
DNA testing was in its very early forms. It was very expensive to do, and it was very difficult to get good results.
Hey man, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing? The test results came back inconclusive. I checked everything that was submitted, and she laid out there for 4 or 5 days, so we just couldn't get a good sample.
Not the news I was looking for.
We just did not have enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt at that point that David Ashworth was the killer of Lisa Summers. I had sat down a couple times and presented what I had to the prosecutor's office, but you have to be able to take that case into court. You have to be able to win that case because there's double jeopardy. You can't try that person again. So it's better to set it on the side and hope down the road that it develops into something rather than take it to court and lose it and that killer is a winner. So I set it aside with regret. I set it aside.
Lisa's best friends, Billy and Julie, fear Lisa's case will never get solved.
You know, I don't want to say I gave up that they would find someone, I just came to terms with the longer it was, the less of a chance that they were going to arrest anyone for it.
As the years went on, I'd get on the computer and I'd do a search and see if there was any information. Maybe they did find out who did it and I just missed it in the newspaper or whatnot. It was really frustrating not having that closure.
Lisa's memory comes back to me all the time. Graduation, proms, dances, parties for our children that Billy and I have. Just girls' night out is something that every time it happens, we miss her. She should be there with us. It was a Three Musketeers. It wasn't supposed to be just a duo. There were supposed to be three.
Then 15 years after Lisa's murder, Billy has a vivid dream.
I was walking with a tray of food, and she was sitting across the way.
Lisa, I thought you were dead. Well, no, silly. I'm sitting right here, aren't I?
And I had considered, after that dream, calling the sheriff's office to see if any information had come up, if anybody had taken responsibility.
If Billy called, she would have learned that she isn't alone. Detective Rogers is also haunted by thoughts of Lisa.
It was then that I started to go through evidence that was collected originally at the crime scene. And I noticed a couple of items that had not been submitted for testing, specifically her bra. Thank goodness that the original investigators and the crime lab personnel knew to package this evidence and secure this evidence in a way that someday will be able to be looked at again.
Okay, all right. Well, let's send it to the lab and
All
maybe we'll come up with something.
All right.
DNA had come a long way from 1989. It took a much, much smaller sample of skin tissues, saliva, blood samples, things of that nature to be tested.
2 weeks later, Detective Rogers gets a call from the crime lab. The DNA results are the last chance to nail Lisa Summers' killer. Is the answer worth the wait?
Hey, officer. So, guess what?
What? Tell me. Don't keep me waiting.
We got a hit on David Ashworth leaving a blood sample in the inside portion of Lisa Summers' bra.
More than 16 years after 18-year-old Lisa Summers is murdered, her cold case is finally solved.
Of course, I was ecstatic. I was very happy.
The Indianapolis Crime Lab finds DNA consistent with David Ashworth's on a microscopic bloodstain on Lisa's bra and on the cigarette butt.
Bill Rogers had called me and said, we resubmitted your evidence for DNA testing. And he said, we got 2 hits. And guess who we got the 2 hits on? I said, David Ashworth. He said, yeah. He said, David Ashworth is our killer. I was happily stunned because that was what I wanted out of this case. I wanted to put this case to rest. I wanted to let that family know that I would never forgot about them.
DNA, while it doesn't tell us who committed a crime necessarily, it can tell us who was present at a particular crime scene. So DNA in a case like this certainly links David Ashworth to a crime scene that he didn't want to be linked to.
When I got the results that David Ashworth had left a DNA sample, i.e. a microscopic blood drop on the inside of Lisa Summers' bra, I still wanted to interview him and talk to him about those specific things.
Problem is, David Ashworth left Indiana years ago, so Detective Rogers has to track him down.
If you could slap one character for their dumb decisions, who would it be? Huh? Go on. Vent in the comments. I can't wait to read.
I flew to Lakeland, Florida. I had done some investigation and found that David was living down there. He was working for an irrigation company. I contacted the Polk County Sheriff's Department. their homicide unit and asked for some help in going out to pick up David.
Are you David Ashworth?
Yeah?
I'm Detective Rogers. This is Detective Johnson.
Just about that girl from Indianapolis?
And I said, as a matter of fact, it is.
Miss Ashworth, you want to come with us downtown? Tell us about it? Tell us what you know?
I already gave my side of the story 16 years ago, but whatever.
We take him into the Polk County Sheriff's Department. We chit-chat for a bit. I wanted to ask him some very specific questions, and primarily...
How close were you to the body?
I never got closer than 10 or 15 feet.
Right. Is there any reason why your blood would be found at the crime scene?
No, I couldn't stand the smell. I didn't want to look at her. I certainly didn't touch anything.
I slid over the documentation I had from the DNA lab, which stated that David's DNA was the major contributor for the sample found on the bra and the cigarette butt.
I can tell you that your test is wrong because it wasn't me.
I understand.
And that was pretty much the end of the interview.
Although he denies his involvement, the DNA evidence is overwhelming. Nearly 2 years after Lisa Summers' cold case is reopened, David Ashworth is finally charged with her murder.
Part of the challenge in the case was making sure these witnesses stayed on board. I wouldn't say that all of them were necessarily cooperative. I needed to have Ashworth's friend. I needed David Ashworth's wife. I needed Charlotte Ledbetter and the DNA evidence. And in this case, it was making sure that they'd all be in the courtroom when the time came to testify.
At the trial, prosecutors present their version of what happened the night Lisa Summers is murdered.
I've seen you around town. You're pretty cute. Thanks. A lot of people tell you that?
I don't know.
You don't know? Come on, beautiful girl like you. You don't keep your eyes open? I bet you didn't think this was gonna be your lucky night to walk home with a guy like me.
He's probably drunk, or at least he's been drinking, and I think that she declined his advances. She didn't want to have anything to do with him. And at that point, he pulled her into the field. She's resisting him, she's fighting back, she's clawing him, and...
Shut up. Stop it!
I said shut up!
He strangles her.
The trial in March 2008 lasts 3 days. Lisa's neighbor, Donna Cruz, attends.
I had tears in my eyes, and I even said a little prayer in Thanksgiving, just that I know Lisa and Dorothy were together, and I wanted to be there for Lisa. And I wanted to be there for Dorothy, Lisa's mother, because I too have a daughter, and you know, you never want any harm to come to your children. And I wanted to be there for all mothers. I felt like justice needed to be served here to someone who had taken a human life.
The jury deliberates less than an hour and returns with a verdict of guilty. David Ashworth is sentenced to 60 years in prison.
I was overjoyed that we've solved another one. We've taken another bad guy off the street.
For Lisa's friends, there's just one thing left to do.
During all the years that it was a cold case, I only went out to the cemetery a couple of times.
Be honest. Did you watch the last scene through your fingers? Comment yes or no.
There's something there that says Lisa was a part of this world. Somebody cared about her. It's a bittersweet thing for me because this was, you know, my best friend.
We'll never forget her. That's the only way to keep her alive, is to keep the stories and the memories going. Lisa will always be loved, and she'll always be missed.